Dead by Daylight is an incredibly complex game, with an ever-increasing roster and killers to try, learn, and master. And that's why today, equipped with knowledge bestowed upon me by Dead by Daylight's strongest killer mains, and over 4 years of game experience, I'm hoping to teach you a little something new with one tip for every killer in DBD. To celebrate the release of the upcoming chapter, I'm going to give away 3 more copies, so stay tuned, and thank you, as always, to our channel members for their ongoing support. The Trapper. It's important to make sure your setup is in a gen cluster early. Too many players spread their traps out, and at the end of the game you want them concentrated in the area around the gens. It's also important that you take chase in the setup, and if someone's taking you away from the 3-gen and away from the traps, drop the chase and head back to where you know is safe. The Wraith. This is a killer who's very reliant on his uncloak add-ons, and when you're running the best one of these, and sometimes even the second best one when you're on ping, as long as you touch the back of the survivor you're chasing, at that point if you begin the uncloak, and as the uncloak ends, immediately lunge, as long as they're not in a tile to stun you with a pallet obviously, you will 100% connect that swing. You don't have to do any silly mind games with the cloak. As long as you're in the open, you can literally just touch them, uncloak, and that's a 3 down or 3 hit. Hillbilly. One of the biggest mistakes new players make is running the add-ons that mean your Ogre Drive doesn't deplete for longer, but these add-ons are completely unnecessary. All you have to do on Hillbilly if your Ogre Drive meter is starting to deplete is literally tap your chainsaw for half a second, and it keeps its current progress, and you don't have to worry about losing out on the Ogre Drive that you built up over time. The Nurse. Generally speaking, you only ever want to be using 1 blink at a time. When it comes to mobility, you can't hold the second one for as long as you can hold the first one. So the second one is a waste to traverse. And in chase, if you know when both blinks you're not going to be able to connect the hit, using it is a waste of time. It's a good idea to use 1 blink, take the fatigue, let it recover, which is very quick, and then you have 2 blinks in chase. Your first one should be for positioning, and you should only really need the second one if you're going to connect that hit. The Shape. Where possible, stand still to stalk, because the rate of stalking while standing still is significantly faster than if you're moving. Obviously, use this feature sparingly. If you're in a loop with somebody, don't just start randomly standing still. It is a bit of a common sense thing, but if you're looking at someone from afar, you slow down by 60% while stalking anyway, so walking towards them during that stalk is going to cost you a lot more time. They're going to hear the sound cue that you're stalking them, and you're going to get your power a lot slower. Stop moving, stand still, and you'll get your main power significantly quicker just by standing still to stalk. The Hag. It sounds kind of obvious, but you don't always need to teleport to the trap. Part of the mind game, especially in chase, is whether or not you do decide to take that trap. Mix up whether you do it or whether you don't do it frequently, and the people in chase won't be able to predict what you're going to do. It's similar to the Remnant on Dredge. You're placing an anti-loop, and you can choose to let go, or you can choose to commit to the teleport. And it's the same with Hag. You have a longer time than you think you do to take that teleport, so a big part of the mind game is just making the person you're chasing think you're going to teleport. A lot of people impulsively will teleport every single time, and more often than not, this isn't always the best thing you can do. The Doctor. It's an important thing to learn early on. Your static blast is tied to your terror radius, meaning perks can affect it, add-ons can affect it, and you can even transfer it with things like Dark Devotion, Unforeseen, and Hexoculture and Doom. With that in mind, when you spawn in especially, you don't want to just immediately waste your static blast. So unless you're on a tiny map with a massive terror radius, will never spawn in your terror radius. It's a good idea to position yourself carefully to where you would assume survivors are going to be, and then you can send it. A good perk to practice this with is Whispers. Generally speaking, not a very good perk, but it detects survivors within 32 meters, and that's how big your base terror radius is. So if you see that perk light up, you know you can send a static blast and get some screams, get some tear-ups, and find out where people are. The Huntress. On some short, tall loops, a lot of Huntresses will respect and try to throw a hatchet, or they'll wind up on the corners, and it just never tends to work. On a lot of these small loops, your best play is just to brute force through the pallet, play for the M1, and Singularity is clearly going to throw the pallet, that's when you pull up the hatchet. Huntress is a 110 killer, so wasting your time on these short killers means that you're not getting good pallets out the way elsewhere on the map. The Cannibal. A lot of newer bubba players tend to stare at the bottom left of the screen to count their charges, make sure they're putting the charges in correctly. All you need to do, assuming you don't have duration add-ons, is watch the center of the screen, and after bubba does 4 sweeps, that's when you input another charge. This means if you're counting that, you can also concentrate on the gameplay in the center, get more hits, and you don't need to worry about crashing or any other mistakes you're gonna make because you're not actually focusing on the game. The Nightmare. Singoikas can wake up from the dream world in multiple ways, and one of these is alarm clocks around the map. Now, the only special thing about these alarm clocks is that they grant Singoikas sleep immunity, and you can see this as the Nightmare on the left indicated in yellow. If the Singoika is sleep immune, it means that you can't send a snare or trigger a pallet, which otherwise would put them into the dream world faster, so don't spam your abilities on sleep immune Singoikas, you're just wasting your time. The Pig. When starting out with the Pig, it can be tempting to traverse the map in the crouch form because you are undetectable, but this reduces your move speed significantly. The crouch really should be used for well-informed stealth players leaning into aura perks or your knowledge of where Singoikas are, or obviously is a chase tool to activate your ambush. Don't traverse the entire map in crouch because you're going to waste so much time and lose out on gens doing it that way. The Clown. Clown has 2 bottles, one's yellow, one's pink, and the pink one is to slow Singoikas down. But what isn't immediately obvious is that Singoikas inflicted by the pink gas cannot cast halt, meaning that you can go for M1 swings you generally wouldn't be able to go for. If they approach the halt while under the infliction on the afterpiece tonic, they are going to medium halt the window, and this means you can guarantee more hits, you can grab injured Singoikas. It's just something to be aware of in the average chase and not getting caught out expecting the Singoika to be able to fast halt the window because they can't. The Spirit. Part of Spirit's power is scratch mark tracking and listening for injured Singoikas, but as a newer Spirit, you're going to find Singoikas who walk while healthy, and sometimes you won't hear their breathing because some Singoikas are quieter than others. One thing that you can do, however, on a lot of maps is watch out for the movement of the grass, the corn, and other indications the Singoika is physically in a position. It's important to use your ears with Spirit, but it's equally as important to watch what's going on around you to understand where the Singoika is moving. The Legion. You might make the common mistake of overextending as Legion, going for a killer instinct that you simply can't catch up to. At this point, in a lot of cases, it's sensible to cancel at the point you're at. M1ing while in power, it does end your power, but it also zeroes the meter in the bottom left, whereas manually cancelling your power gives you the remainder duration of the power back as progress to reactivate it. So when overextending or just wanting to preserve your power, manually cancel, don't swing and don't let it time out, because you will be on cooldown for a long time. The Plague. It can be really tempting when you're learning this killer to flick your head around to spray a Singoika, but the way Plague's projectile works isn't as a constant stream. It's actually lots of little projectiles in a chain together, and there are gaps between said projectiles. In a situation like this where Singoika's movement is sporadic and you do want to spray them rather than directly aiming at them, tap your A and D keys, as this keeps your projectile moving in a constant motion and doesn't leave massive gaps. The Ghost Case. If you've ever gone against the Ghost Case before, you'll notice that some Ghost Case players do lean around corners to stalk, and this might seem like a stealth play. The actual use for this is your stalk rate while leaning is doubled. This can be incredibly useful to get marks and Singoikas way faster and also maintain the stealth level that comes from leaning. When sneaking up on a Singoika that you're attempting to stalk, try to get behind a little bit of cover so you can increase your stalk rate and expose them or 99 them way faster. The Demogorgon. Your map rehearsal tool as the Demogorgon is the portal system, and these have to be manually placed, and the Singoikas can also shred them once they're visible. If you queue into a coordinated team who are regularly shredding your portals, what you should do near the end of the game when you have a 3-gen setup is to double your portals up, put one where you want it, and one in a backup position. Only teleport to the one that is visible to Singoikas, and if they break it, you still have another portal that they aren't aware of. You can still get back to key objectives like your 3-gen. That's split up, and you would want that rehearsal tool to access. The Oni. You can actually tap A and D while dashing, and this allows you to strafe while dashing, but repeatedly tapping them both actually physically slows you down. You wouldn't think this is too useful, but it does mean you can turn tighter, and it also allows you to do micro respects on pallets. You have to basically ask yourself, is there a point here for me to go slower? Will this help me? And the answer is yes. All you gotta do is just repeatedly tap A and D, and it'll slow you down in your dash and allow you to make more precise movements. The Deathslinger. A lot of people get into the habit with this killer of instantly reloading every time they hit or miss a shot, and sometimes it just isn't necessary. If a Singularity zones himself out and you can walk down realistically with the M1, you should do that. Equally, you might go for an overly ambitious shot, and if you're on a map with high walls or on an indoor map, you might lose line of sight of said Singularity and they'll get away. This is the point you don't want to reload, and you probably are better off instead taking the time to catch up to the Singularity and then reloading. The Executioner. One bad habit that people develop with Pyramid Head is that they drag their trails unnecessarily for long distances. Not only is this very slow, but you also drain your power, of which you need a decent bit of charge to send an M2 attack. The best use for your trails is just to tap fire it through doorways and on pallets, key areas. You don't need to shut the whole loop down, just shut down part of the pallet, enough that they can't just crouch over it and chase, but not so much that you're dragging and holding and wasting your entire power charge just to shut the loop down. The Blight. One of the hardest things to understand on Blight is how to navigate doorways both on indoor maps and key tiles such as Shack. The way the Blight works is when you hit a wall you bounce back from it. The higher your ping is, the further you bounce back. So on a tile like Shack, what you really want to be doing is bouncing in this sort of spot rather than in the door frame, because it's going to position you into the centre of the door frame. At that point you can choose to go into said room or you can go around it. It gives you the choice and the options in the situation. The Twins. Victor actually has a mini Blood Warden built into him. All you've got to do is latch onto a healthy Singularity who's standing in the exit gate, and as long as that Singularity still has Victor on their back, they can't leave. The game also gives you enough time to M1 down them and pick them up before they can crawl out. The Trickster. Don't feel obligated to always use his knives. In 9.4 it takes 8 knives, and in 9.5 it takes 6 knives to down a Singularity. But in a lot of cases where you're very close to them, you don't want to be wasting your projectiles and wasting time and giving them distance. All you have to do is M1 them to down them if they're injured. This is also the perfect point of the video to announce that I am giving away 3 copies of the All Kill Comeback chapter. All I need you to do is comment which killer's tip you didn't already know about, and make sure to end your comment with your favourite emoji so I know that you've reached this point of the video and want to enter the giveaway. Make sure you're in the Discord, I'll be announcing the results there, and don't mention the giveaway in your comment. The Nemesis. Your number one priority to starting every game is to get out of tier 1 and into tier 2, because this grants you the ability to break pallets and doors with your power. To get tier 2, you get 3 mutation points from an uninfected Singularity, 1 point from an infected Singularity, and 1 point from a zombie. This can be changed with add-ons. You need to work out where you are on the map and hard focus either the same Singularity with your M2, or hit one Singularity and then move on to another Singularity, and this will get you straight out your tier 1 and mean you can break pallets with your power when you miss. The Cenobite. It can be tempting when you hear the killer instinct to TP to the box immediately, but it's important to assess the situation you're in. If you're close to getting it down, you should commit to said down and let the box be completed, and if the box sound is close by to where you are, all you need to do is bind the person with a chain. It stops them from finishing the box, lets you down them, and when you pick your own box up either from the floor or a dead Singularity hands, it replaces on the map and instantly starts the chain hunt. The Artist. If you misplace a bird on a pallet, it can be tempting to just leave it and let it burn out in its own time, but only when it comes to one bird. It's actually faster to send the bird and miss than it is to leave it to burn out. This doesn't apply if you place more than one bird. If you place 2 wrong, let them burn out, you'll get your power back quicker. But if you've only placed 1 bird incorrectly, just fire it and you can get your power back faster than leaving it. The Onryo. While demanifested and able to teleport to TVs, you can't M1, but you also have no collision, which means you can go through Singularities who are body blocking each other, and you're also immune to stuns, so you can walk into pallets and tank it immediately without wasting time getting stunned. The Dredge. The Dredge's second ability, the Remnant, can be placed down on loops, and it's one of the greatest anti-loop abilities in the game. And it's important to factor in that when you teleport back to the Remnant, you're going to be facing the direction you were when you placed it. This means if you hang a specific way you want to be facing to come out in the Remnant, you may have to 180 on the spot and face in that direction as you place it. The Mastermind. Where it's sensible to, try to throw Singularities into walls, because the way Wesker's power cooldown works, the second the Singularity leaves his grasp is when the power starts to come back, so if you slam them, you have to slam them into the wall and drop them again, and that's when it starts to come back. Obviously this rule doesn't apply if you're down on them, there's no point in throwing them, unless you're wanting to go for a snowball in the endgame, but for the purposes of injuring, if you're able to, try and position yourself in a direction that's going to throw them into a wall, and you can get your power back significantly quicker quicker and puts you on a shorter cooldown. The Knight. It's not immediately obvious, but every single one of the Knight's guards has a different cooldown and primary ability. The Carnifex has a 20-second cooldown, and this guard's main use is to break pallets, walls, and gens. It does this exceptionally quickly and should be used as a chase tool. The Assassin has a 30-second cooldown, and this is your chase guard. You place it down, it detects a survivor, it's the fastest moving in chase, and injuring them without downing them also inflicts a deep wound, which no other guard does. The Jailer has a 25-second cooldown, it can see the furthest, patrols the longest, and also has the longest chase of the guards. So use your Carnifex for damaging, your Assassin for informed chase plays, and use your Jailer for scouting and taking a survivor out the equation. The Skull Merchant. To change the rotation of your drones, or to recall them, you have to bring up the scanner, but this scanner isn't only for that purpose. When a survivor receives a claw trap, which happens after they scan 3 times, this actually causes them to be tracked on your tracker. They're marked with a square, and it's relative to your position, and if they're on a floor above you on a map with multiple stories, it's also indicated by a triangle, so you can find survivors who are affected with claw traps using the tracker. It's not just to interact with your drones. The Singularity. This killer is special in that you can bring up your M2 and it doesn't actually slow you down like it does with Slinger or Huntress or other ranged killers who have to aim. This means that in a chase you can actually fake teleporting, because not many Singularity players do this, and it causes survivors to play differently. You don't have to commit to the teleport, you can hold it, you can bring it up and put it down. There's no penalties for tapping your M2 in chase, so don't always 100% commit to the teleports. Hold it when it's useful, or fake it to make the survivor panic. The Xenomorph. You have to treat the tail attack like a needle on the end of a piece of string. You want to kind of throw it out and swing it down, and you can actually hit over a lot of objects you wouldn't otherwise be able to hit over. It's similar to how you can drag the whip with Nemesis, only it's vertical rather than horizontal, and allows you to get hits over short objects that the survivor's crouching behind that you generally wouldn't otherwise be able to hit. The Good Guy. One of the benefits of playing Chucky is you're always in the third person, and you can make use of some survivor text as this killer. For example, on corners in Shack or other buildings like this, you can also hold the same checkbox that survivors hold. You don't have to be committing to the chase, you can also just camp corners. You can activate Hidey Hone, this will also hide your red stain, and just be exceptionally patient with it. The Unknown. Keep an eye on your clone spawn meter in the bottom left. You have an indication up the edge of your screen, but you also have an exact timer, and this tells you when your clones are going to be placed. And oftentimes, these will be automatically placed in really bad positions. If you want to avoid it being dropped somewhere terrible, all you have to do is tap M2 or do an interaction such as vaulting or breaking, and this resets the dropping timer. The raid clones generate at is also increased per infected survivor, so just make sure you know how long it is until your next clone is going to be dropped, and be sensible as to where you're putting them. You don't want these randomly in the open and not next to objectives or hooks. The Lich. You don't have to commit to all spells. Taking them, especially the Mage Hand, can cause survivors to misplay and do very silly things, and although it does slow you down, it doesn't slow you down very much. Especially with the Mage Hand, you want to be taking the M2 from time to time to make survivors waste pallets or greed them when they expect you to use it. The Dark Lord. You can only hit your Hellfire over objects that are the same height as a male survivor or shorter. This means that if the object is taller, such as a tall wall, the projectile isn't going to go through that object. It's exceptionally easy to refer to this when you're chasing a male survivor. If you can't see the top of their head over the object, it means that you can't hit your M2 through it, and you're going to have to be more patient with where you do send it. The Houndmaster. When sending your dog to chase a survivor, you get a second dash by activating right click, but you aren't obligated to use this. The survivor is naturally going to play around the fact that you're going to use that second dash, because it's what a lot of Houndmasters tend to do, but you have to remember your dog is as much of a zoning tool, like Clown's pink bottles, as it is a chase and grabbing tool. You can send the first dash to block things such as a pallet, force the survivor to go around it, and you don't have to commit to that second dash. You also have quite a long window to send it if you decide you want to change your mind. The Ghoul. One of the most confusing parts of Kaniki's kit for new killers is this indication in the middle when you go to M2 a survivor that has a picture of an M1 in it, or whatever button it is if you're on controller. Timing this hit actually affects only one thing, and it's perfect timing. The mark on the left of the screen determines how long you're going to have 3 dashes for and being in rage mode, and this is the player who has the longest timer. When somebody has a timer on the left, this timer takes 45 seconds to deplete, but if you hit them with a perfectly timed attack, you actually get 10 extra seconds. It gives you more of a chance to spread your infection to another person and stay in enraged mode for longer. The Animatronic. Springtrap's special because he has a variable move speed. If he has the ability to currently throw his axe, he's 110. If the axe is in a survivor or the environment, he's 115. There's two ways to put this on forceful cooldown without having to manually recall it and go through that animation. One is when you down a survivor who's injured into the dying state. This obviously isn't going to be massively useful, but one thing that you can do is after hooking a survivor, you can throw the axe at the survivor on hook. This doesn't lodge it in them, so it puts it directly on the cooldown. And it essentially gives you 8 seconds on 5% move speed. Very, very, very few people do this. It looks like you're being toxic, but what you're really doing is throwing your power away to get a little bit of haste and a little bit of movement if you're choosing to walk instead of using the dolls. And after this timer is up, you get the axe put back in hand without having to recall it from the environment. The Krasue. Krasue's M2 attack that gives the survivor the Lich effect can actually be aimed highly on walls, and this auto aims onto survivors around it. So if you're in a tall loop and you can't get a direct line of sight M2 onto a survivor, all you have to do is shoot at a tall wall as close to the survivor as you can, and the spread from this generally goes in the direction of the survivor. The Thirst. You can pass through all objects on this killer. It works not unlike Dracula's bat form in that you can go through pallets and windows when you're in the hull, but he's also the first killer in the game who can also pass through an unbroken breakable door. This is an incredibly useful feature on certain maps, especially ones such as Ormond and Dead Dog Saloon, where these breakable doors cause you to go all the way around things. Make use of the fact that you can pass through almost everything while traversing the Upside Down. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure to enter the giveaway in the comments and join the Discord, and let me know what you'd like to see me cover next. Thank you once again to the channel members, and I'll see you all soon.